Hey everyone, good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the US. We're really excited to be sharing with you today some of the latest updates that we've been applying to the dashboard for Rapid Vehicle Electrification, which is a tool that's been developed between the Electrification Coalition and Atlas Public Policy. So we're going to be running through a couple of those updates to the tool, talking about a banner year that we've seen in the tool being used in the field and helping identify scaled electrification. But before we get going on that, let me introduce myself. My name is Matt Stevens-Rich. I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Electrification Coalition and get to do a lot of work with public and private fleets in identifying best fit for electrification. I'm going to be joined by a couple counterparts, both from the Electrification Coalition and Atlas Public Policy, where we're going to be walking through not just the updates that we've been applying to the DRVE tool to date, but also a little bit of a retrospect, looking back not only over the last year, but actually last 2 years that we've had the DRVE tool deployed. Collectively, as we've been looking into some new features we're looking to bring to the table in 2023, we realized it actually had been a while since we had done a public forum demonstration and walkthrough on the DRVE tool, especially to highlight some of the ways it's been used and featured. So ultimately saw this as a great opportunity before we head out on holiday break for the rest of December to walk through some features and ways that it's been used. So we'll be spending this first hour on going through some of the tool feature sets, some recap on how we've been seeing the DRVE tool used. And then if you're able to stick around for a second hour, and actually a little bit ahead of that second hour, we'll also be doing a walkthrough demonstration workshop where Spencer Burgett with Atlas Public Policy will be doing a live demonstration as well. Throughout all of this, you are absolutely welcome to ask anything in the Q&A. We'll actually have 2 feature Q&A sessions as we go. One before we move into the demonstration section, and then a second as we're in the midst of doing the demo work as well. You can ask your questions on the Q&A button, ultimately at the bottom of your Zoom control. We have folks in moderation who are keeping an eye out, and we'll be channeling and flowing that through. So with that, we'll get things started and go into some slide deck here. I'm going to be giving the classic next slide prompt as we have a way that we're sharing that across. So as I was mentioning, the dashboard for Rapid Vehicle Electrification, or DRVE tool, for those of you who are not familiar with it, really started in a simple place about 3 years ago. Atlas and EC, we were actually, parts of our team were meeting together at a conference, talking through how there might be a better way to leverage and make fleet electrification assessment more accessible to the masses. A standard fleet analyses, they can often be costly and take a little bit more time, often in the weeks to months range, and depending on the level of granularity, a little bit difficult to interpret. So with that spirit, we looked at creating a tool that could not only assess vehicle fleets and a wider variety of data, but also something that would be easier to use, something ultimately Excel-based that could run on any computer or type of application. Another really big thing too, an opportunity that we saw, was bringing light, medium, and heavy-duty fleet analysis underneath one tool. There are a wide variety of amazing tools out there, but often it's hard to bring all of that assessment together underneath one roof, needing to use multiple tools. Next slide, please. So with that, we set about creating the DRVE tool. We've really found a best case and use case here for really focusing on near-term procurement opportunities. At the EC and the Electrification Coalition, we run a variety of procurement programs and ways that we support fleets in identifying next steps, often not just focusing on the analysis itself, but helping offer and usher the process through the electrification journey. So with that, we found a lot of success using the DRVE tool as a helpful tool and implement to identify next best fit for electrification in fleets, both big and small. Another really helpful element that we found for use case as well is finding average lifetime and per mile cost by model. So that's breaking it out not just as light, medium, and heavy, but even further going into the weeds on sedans versus SUVs or delivery trucks and the likes of that. And there's also ability to do emissions comparison by use case, which also helps lend a lot of helpful insight, not just allowing for a total cost of ownership comparison, but emission profiles too. There's also the big driving question of impacts on saving potential with different financing and other types of financial models. Often, many fleets are not just looking at purchasing vehicles outright, but also thinking about some different financing options that might be on the table. So like I mentioned, it's been a little bit of a journey that got us here as we were prepping and pulling together some of our thoughts and notes for this webinar. I did take a moment to actually go back through the journey. So if you roll the clocks back, March 2020, as we were heading into the depths of quarantine, that was actually when we started our initial concepting on the Drive tool. So working with Atlas, we created and really started on that discovery of what does a free-to-use total cost of ownership calculator look like. We worked through a couple iterations with it and a couple close city partners as well, who were amazingly helpful in our beta testing process, really helpful and constructive in adding new features and putting in requests for things that would be very helpful. So we beta tested starting in July 2020, and by about December of 2020, that's when we had our first stable Drive tool, which led up to our full official launch April of last year, where we did a great tool release. Those of you who were tuning into our webinar at that point, we were really excited to announce about midsummer last year, getting close to our 500th user and 10,000 vehicles assessed. Well, I'm really excited to report that as we have actually been updating our metric capture throughout the latter half of last year and even into this year, and across multiple versions of the Drive tool that we've also been pushing to update as well, we're actually now cresting over 450,000 vehicles assessed. And on the next slide, I actually have some further stats breakdown to that too. So overall, we're cresting over the 450,000th mark, which is just absolutely astounding and so exciting to see such popular uptake and use of the Drive tool. That's also representative of over 1,000 fleets. And this is both on public and private side. To give you a quick anecdote to that, we actually received some word from some city fleets throughout the summer who had EDF environmental fellows and sustainability focused summer internships. They were finding a lot of great use case for the Drive tool in some of their own casework and other applications. We've also been hitting the ground on presenting a lot on the Drive tool. You might have been a chance to join us at one of our workshops or other types of presentations. That's another really important and critical element that we found to really be sure that folks are finding the Drive tool and also getting questions answered, as well as opportunity to raise any new features they might like added. And across that too, we've actually been focusing on applying new updates to the Drive tool as well. We're just over 15 new features added, which Spencer will be walking through some of the latest additions that we focus on adding some further granularity on state-by-state incentive calculation and other comparison. Next slide, please. And across all of this, and I guess the biggest thing to bear in mind is we've really focused from the ground up on having easy inputs and operation with the Drive tool. Often it's all too easy to hit a couple buttons on a calculator, but then it does beg the question, how did I get to this output and result? Throughout the design of the Drive tool, we've really focused on pulling from automated and official sourcing across the Federal Highway Administration, Department of Energy, US EPA, and fueleconomy.gov sources. Good news to this as well, by working with these open APIs, you can also subsequently rerun other analyses of the Drive tool, and it will automatically update for new model vehicle detail and availability. For instance, as we get ready to round into 2023, you will start to see 2023 model year light-duty vehicles start to populate into the Drive tool as we get those details and specifications from fueleconomy.gov. We also have really focused on having ease of use in terms of the level of detail needed in data. So have designed it to be able to take both CSV and Excel file, where we're able to take a wider variety of vehicle data than can sometimes be capable in other tools. By focusing on the vehicle identification number, the VIN number, that allows us to extrapolate a wide variety of data and detail so that we can run an analysis on your computer, not needing to take it to cloud source computing or other options, and be able to generate a meaningful report just about under an hour as we run that on your computer. But overall, really excited to report on both the high usage rate that we've seen with the Drive tool and application. On EC's and Atlas's side, we've actually been busy working not just with local fleets on running drive analysis, but have also worked with a number of state fleets and even a federal analysis that we did as well. So we've been finding really helpful use case in all scenarios to really identify best fit for electrification. And, above all else, the biggest thing to take away from here is, first, if you haven't, please download the Drive tool. You can find it on both of our websites, free to download, free to use, and more than happy to follow up with any questions you might have, be it during the webinar here or outside of the webinar. But above all else, we found a lot of big benefit in really using the tool, toying around, playing with those different settings to find some of those best fit applications. Spencer will actually be walking through both some intro level and even a little bit further advanced user recommendations that we found. But overall, focusing really on how to find an easy way to sort and find meaning in electrification across vehicle recommendations. All too often, it's easy to get the results. Interpreting the results is another game. So we've really focused on not just having helpful interpretation, but also fully exportable data in detail as well in the way the tool is used and leveraged. Next slide, please. So with that, I will hand it off to Spencer, who's going to take us through a little bit of the run of demonstration. But actually, before I do that, I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself. I'll also be joined by Steph Wagner on our team, where we're going to talk a little bit, not just on some of the quick cursory best fit and applications that I was detailing in some of my quick intro comments here, but even going a little bit deeper in some of the ways that we found the Drive tool being used. So I'll be joined by them here. If you do have any questions, again, please do feel free to add that to the Q&A. We'll be tracking that, have a couple as well teed up here too. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining Spencer and Steph. And overall was really excited to get this team together. And again, another short round of introductions. So Steph Wagner, she is the EV tech specialist on the Electrification Coalition, focuses on a variety of tech support across all things fleet electrification. Spencer is with Atlas Public Policy, essentially our immediate counterpart and partner in crime in all things development. I guess the first question for Steph, and maybe this is a good one for Spencer too, with all the features and updates that we've applied to the Drive tool, what type of best fit or popular response have we seen from end users as they are using the tool and finding helpful use for it?
Yeah, I'd say in my experience working with fleet managers for local levels, it would have to definitely be the forecasting function, since it essentially helps you, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but it helps you predict cost estimates for the near future and essentially showing you how much you will save over time. That is the long and short, but we'll go into how the feature works later with Spencer's walkthrough.
No, that's a great flag. The forecasting tool that Steph mentioned, that allows you not only to find the best fit for the near term, like I was mentioning, of current available vehicle models, but also allows some forecasting of prospective costs of vehicles down the road. Helps with that 2030, 2035 type of prospectus that we find a lot of local fleets grappling with. Spencer, what about for you?
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun with the custom vehicles feature that we added, I think last year, where we've had an analysis that we did with a fleet that was trying to replace a number of snowplows. or that require kind of a very custom application where you're going to see different price points, different fuel efficiencies, and all of that in order to really accurately model kind of the forefront of vehicle electrification as we're starting to see more of these. Vehicle electrification is no longer just your passenger cars. We're looking at the snowplows, fire trucks, all these custom applications. And so that custom vehicle feature was really big in enabling us to really stay on the forefront of electrification.
Yeah, that's a great shout. That was an unexpected response we saw from a number of vehicle manufacturer partners and OEM partners who were curious to use the drive tool in actually some of their prototyping, kind of reverse engineering, or at least gaming out what different types of financial scenario can look like given certain vehicle parameters. So likewise, great answer. Looking at a couple questions we have coming in from the Q&A. Another question for both of you. As we alluded to, both public and private users, we've really found using the tool. Any difference or denomination that we see most popular with the public fleet crowd versus private fleet crowd? Any specific things that we see in use case across different fleet types? Spencer, why don't we go with you first?
Yeah, on the public side, we've really focused on the comprehensive full fleet electrification, where we're looking at everything from light duty vehicles, police vehicles, vans, trucks, refuse trucks. Really seen public fleets take a whole fleet approach on that side. I think on the private side, we've tended to see a little more targeted approach, where maybe they're looking at 10 to 15 vehicles that they might be interested in electrifying, and kind of exploring maybe more scenarios for those 10 to 15 to really hone in on exactly what inputs and which vehicles make the cut for electrification.
That's great thoughts. Steph, what about for you?
Particularly for private sector, I would have to say the capability to customize cost factors like insurance or even en route charging that are certainly taken into considerations for financing said fleet, EV fleet.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Spencer will show actually how you can also integrate charger costs, both the capital procurement of them, but some other cost considerations. Charging is a really important element as you look at the whole picture for electrifying your fleet. Let's see, another question here, aside from TCO calculations, any other helpful applications for the drive tool? Admittedly, we have found total cost of ownership big driver and determiner to perspective of being able to electrify fleet, but other use cases or other types of things that we found both in new users and even veteran users of the drive tool. I'll change it up. Steph, finding anything in terms of other use application?
I'm happy to take that one, Matt. I had a couple of cool ones come up recently. The first one was with public fleet we were working at, where we usually look at total cost of ownership as long-term planning, but this fleet had actually secured 15 Ford F-150 Lightning electric pickup trucks, and they're trying to think about where can those 15 trucks be deployed, which vehicles should those replace to realize the biggest savings. And so in that case, they had already procured the vehicles, and we compared those 15 Ford Lightning against a whole range of different vehicles that they had in their fleet to identify, hey, these are the 15 vehicles where if you replace those, you're going to see the biggest benefits from those new vehicles. So that was a really cool application. Another one that we've seen actually was with a group of advocates in Rhode Island looking at trying to understand the electrification total cost of ownership implications for the entire fleet of vehicles in Rhode Island. Now, Drive can't run 500,000 vehicles through an analysis. That's a little beyond the scope of the tool. But what they were able to do was really build a sample fleet of, okay, we have 10,000 vehicles that look like this, and we have 20,000 vehicles that look like this in the state. And then from there, really understand, especially utilizing the emissions tool or the emissions part of the tool, able to then understand at a high level for the entire state of Rhode Island, understanding where there's the biggest potential benefits for electrification, both from an economic perspective and from that emissions perspective. So I thought those were two really cool applications that I hadn't even thought of until both of those fleets approached us with that in mind.
Yeah, no, I love hearing about that. And indeed, we found a benefit of having the tool be free to use. We've even heard from some college students who have been using and modifying some of the application for their own work, which is really exciting hearing that use case. So I'll actually kind of weave a couple questions that we're getting from the audience here together. So, overall, one question is, can the drive tool work with truck fleets and heavier duty? And the answer is ultimately yes. Again, we really focus on using those VIN numbers. That gives us a wide variety of data, also helps us actually have a better confirmation of the vehicle spec. Other applications often have you enter the year, make, model, engine size, other specifications separately. That can create some error in input. So by having the VIN data together, makes for a little bit more accurate entry. But ultimately, we're able to cross-reference that across vehicle set and data set to find that best fit. But I'll kind of weave that into a couple thematic questions we have coming here, where and question to both Steph and Spencer, finding use case for this, not just in truck fleets, but other types of special applications. So I'll ask this question to Spencer. Is there a way ultimately to account for such as a refrigeration unit or other types of special use case, other potential add-on equipment that might be factoring in to the application as well?
Yeah, so the real strength of the drive tool is how flexible and easy to customize it is. This is something definitely to keep in mind with any type of truck or specialized use case, is that there's option to change pretty much any setting in terms of at the vehicle, at the market level. So looking at vehicle efficiency, vehicle purchase price, vehicle insurance costs, vehicle maintenance costs, all of those, we have a robust set of defaults that are loaded in. But let's say you're running a refrigerated truck or a special application, kind of a rare configuration. You can customize maybe greater maintenance costs to reflect that, greater emissions most likely to reflect that, maybe a higher upfront purchase price. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind with truck applications specifically, is there's so many different configurations, and we do try to capture an average price for those models. But that we do recommend if you can get a quote ahead of time to get in front of it and have the exact price and specifications for your application, it can help make for a more accurate analysis.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, we've been definitely finding more unique applications, questions, essentially trying to see how far we can push and apply the drive tool. Question list for you, Steph, because I know you've worked with some fleets on this. What are some different abilities to control for fuel costs? The question here is specifically to inputting different utility pricing schedules or other types of approach. Ultimately, what are some ways that we have found help for considering different fuel costs, be it electricity and even comparing gas or diesel in the mix?
Fortunately for that aspect, it is also fully customizable, which allows you, for example, if you have a contracted agreement with your utility company, you are able to essentially get that price. So it's not just hard set, because what will appear, which Spencer will show later in the walkthrough, is that you enter your zip code in, which automatically generates a region-based price that is average for the area. But again, this is customizable. So if you say are a commercial fleet, you are able to easily just make that as you will.
No, thanks for that. Are you noticing a theme? A lot of customization here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. keep the questions coming. Ultimately, we're actually going to, I promise I'm not skipping some, and if only for the sake of, we'll actually be covering a little bit of that in Spencer's section. So with that, Spencer, why don't I give it to you to take it away on walking through some more sectioning of the drive tool.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Give me 1 second here.
That
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and focus on the Drive 1.8 update that we just put out. But before we jump into all of those new features to get into, wanted to give a quick background on myself and Atlas Public Policy. We've been working with the Electrification Coalition for a long time, but we're a small policy tech firm based in DC, really focused on transportation electrification and specifically bringing data analysis to empower decision makers in the transportation electrification industry. And I'm a policy analyst here. I've been here for almost 2 years, and I do manage our side of the Drive tool, provide a lot of one-on-one support. Always love hearing from all of you, so definitely don't hesitate to reach out. We really try to be involved in all that, responsive to feedback, and provide support as needed. So Drive 1.8, we just released earlier this year. Big feature in this update was responding to user feedback around automatically applying state incentives. So we've seen, as the transportation electrification market continues to accelerate, more and more incentive programs enter the market. People are setting up rebates both on the light duty and the heavy duty side. And if we're going to accurately capture the total cost of ownership, it's really important for us to make it as easy as possible for users to bring in those incentives that may be available for their fleet. So we're specifically focused on state level incentives, may in the future bring in some of those utility and local ones as well. But for now, focused on really state level incentives and ones that are more or less guaranteed. So we're not looking at competitive grant programs or ones that might be only accessible to some small portion of fleets. We really have focused on those point of sale ones that the average Drive user can count on. So there's a few examples here, but many more in the tool for you all to check out. And we'll see in the demo later, but basically it's going to work where you put in your zip code based on your location. It'll show you the incentives that could be available to you. User will have the option to add those incentives or not, depending on if they think that they qualify for them. And then for each vehicle in your fleet, the appropriate incentive value will be calculated and added into the tool. So that takes into account things like MSRP limits, as well as incentives that have different values based on the class or the vehicle type, to make sure we're accurately reflecting the incentive available for each vehicle. After that, you still do have the option to customize those if you have inside knowledge or maybe can't monetize the full value of the incentive. We do try to keep everything totally customizable. The other big exciting part of 1.8 was a big update to a lot of our inputs. I know we've seen a lot of changes in some of our market prices over the past year. So we want to make sure that our gasoline, diesel, and electricity prices are up to the moment. Again, these are all customizable and set based on your zip code. And so we draw on data from EIA to have the most up-to-date and accurate reflection of those market prices that are really a key input for this type of analysis. And then lastly, we are seeing a ton of new models hit the market. We want to make sure we are reflecting all of the latest options available. That includes a couple exciting upcoming ones that we're seeing, specifically Chevy Equinox and Chevy Blazer, as we're seeing some more options in that fully electric SUV segment. Also adding that Ford F-150 Lightning, now that that's out on the market. We had kind of a preview of it before. With this version, we have the official specs on it, as well as adding more electric truck and bus options and configurations in the medium heavy duty space, as we've seen more of those hit the market recently as well. So it really is an exploding market, and making sure that our tool is staying on top of all of those market developments is really important to us. Then I think we are going to go into a real quick question answer specifically on 1.8, map up any questions we might have missed in that first section, and then go ahead and get into the demonstration.
Yes, we are not meaning to be a dragging webinar today. Definitely want to be sure we had enough time to pack in the Q&A and possibly get into the demonstration a little bit ahead of it. I have a couple more questions for Steph and Spencer. And again, appreciate everyone adding these in. So one question actually, and again, seeing a couple different themes here. We have alluded to being able to include charging into consideration for the procurement. So one question I'll actually nab out of that is ability to control for factoring in at depot or home charging versus charging en route or throughout the day. We do have a couple controls for that, which Spencer will walk us through in his demo. But as Spencer's pulling that up, Steph, why don't you describe some of the application we use for helping control and consider for charging throughout the operation?
Yes, so one aspect of that is one key function of that allows you to narrow down by vehicle type. So say if you have a lot of pickup trucks or work trucks in your fleet, then you're able to simply select those particular body classes and be able to apply it to those EV alternatives or those ICE vehicles. I'm trying to think if I'm missing any other aspect that is applicable, but
yeah, I would add, Matt, one pretty cool piece is the ability to capture the cost of downtime associated with public charging. So we're not just looking at the cost of electricity at public charging, but for a lot of particularly commercial fleets that we're working with, those the time spent charging at a public charger is part of the bottom line. And so it's really important that we include that setting where fleets are able to put in, this is the cost of, if it takes me 45 minutes to charge, this is the cost incurred for my fleet by that time for public charging. So really trying to take a pretty comprehensive look at all those costs associated with EV charging.
No, appreciate the insight. Another question we have coming through as well is, I'll ask it and actually kind of qualify it a little bit with some immediate troubleshooting, but curious to your guys' thoughts. Can the drive tool inputs be narrowed down to just EVs that are available via state contract process? So that is vehicles that are already on a state contract list. And if so, would that skew results? I'll actually give a quick answer to that. So you are actually able to, while the tool will populate recommended next fit electrification options, you can also customize the comparison. So for instance, let's say you're a big Chevy person and really want to make the Chevy comparison relative to other OEMs, you are able to actually go in and directly control the vehicle comparison. We've actually found this, for instance, as an application for vehicle right sizing. So let's say it's an internal combustion engine pickup truck that really doesn't need that pickup truck application. And so indeed, you want to compare it to a Nissan Leaf, Chevy Bolt, something to that effect. You can actually do that as a direct comparison. So wanted to quickly affirm that, but also Spencer and Steph, anything else to add to that for vehicle control or customization for vehicles returned?
yes, for right sizing, particularly on that note, while yes, the drive tool does automatically give you a recommended for alternative vehicles, you can absolutely 100%, as with any setting in this, customize it. So say if you have an agreed MSRP, then you can simply input that, or if you know exactly, if you have applied telematics already with your fleet, then you can apply what data you already know into that section particularly. For example, let's say how much it costs on the highway versus in a city, and other aspects including that.
Excellent. And to that as well, on relative to state fleet contracts or other types of public bid list, if you do need help in finding vehicle availability or just knowing what options are out there, you can also check out our EV purchasing collaborative program at drivevfleets.com. Has everything go to for all things vehicle procurement. It's also linked in the Drive tool as well. So you'll also find it in the step-by-step process as another great resource for finding vehicle inventory listing. Question for you, Spencer, on our maintenance data. Where is that sourced from? And as you were also alluding to on how we pull those fuel cost averages, which have been bouncing a little bit, how might someone also customize their maintenance data if they do track that?
Yeah, that's one of the more common things that we see customized by our users, because fleets have a lot of times have those types of agreements in place. Our maintenance data is pulled from academic literature on the medium and heavy duty side, and then from AAA on the passenger side in terms of average maintenance cost for both ICE vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and fully electric vehicles. The fuel cost data is a 12-month trailing average from the Energy Information Administration, EIA. It's maintained by the federal government. Again, we're trying to, capture. We use a 12-month moving average, so it's a little less susceptible to month-to-month variations. And then that is at the state level, so that is customized to the specific fleet.
No, thanks for that. We also, for example, also work with fleets that might have a 1 or 2 year fuels schedule or contract. So that's another way that you can also control for local fuel costs as well, or multiple depot fuel costs. Let's see. Another question as well. So we've been really focusing on a lot of the feature updates and also some of the customization. One here on ability to control for daily mileage traveled. I guess ultimately, how do we incorporate vehicle miles traveled and also have some other controls to account for typical driving routine for vehicles across the fleet? This might be a more Spencer leadoff question.
Yeah, that's definitely a question that we get a good deal. The way that we think about Drive is really as that first pass for electrification that's going to be used to identify those vehicles that are likely candidates to be electrified cost effectively. But Drive does not do that kind of route by route daily mileage type analysis. So fleet managers will have to do that kind of second screening to make sure that the vehicle practically, maybe economically can be replaced with an EV, but want to make sure that it practically can be as well. So that's kind of how I would think about Drive in that, in the range of that process to electrify a vehicle.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that. Another question we have too, definitely it's exciting to see some folks tuning in, catching up on some of the new feature updates since maybe they were last using the Drive tool. I guess question for Steph, how do we work with fleets? What types of other resources do we have to help be sure folks are getting what they need to as they're using the tool and applying it to their own use cases?
Right. So if, for example, you're a state fleet or a local fleet, you are automatically, well, depending on the vehicles ultimately we can help you with in terms of finding replacements for, any local fleet is then automatically a part of the Climate Mirror's EV Purchasing Collaborative, which essentially allows you to do large bulk buys of or group buys of EVs, which is very helpful, we've come to find, especially with the wait listing for EVs happened this year and the previous year. Additionally, we also help with we are contracted as a nonpartisan national nonprofit to help with any government fleet with their electrification through the DRVE tool. Additionally, we have also, if you see on our website, do fleet electrification plans, and some examples of that are recently for DC, for Virgin Islands, and yes, those are the most recent ones.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if helpful too, we will have the recording of today up on our YouTube as well as on websites. We also do have a user guide, which has a whole rundown of all the inputs, what the different knobs and levers, as it were, within the DRVE tool control for. And we also do have earlier tutorial videos as well that we continue to keep updated and refreshed. Above all else too, absolutely feel free to reach out to the team, both on the Atlas and EC side, in earnest. And as I was alluding to up top, it's been a lot of just great feedback from the community, from users on, hey, it'd be nice if we could do this, or hey, it would be great if we could do this type of financing approach. This type of feedback is extraordinary, and it really does help us craft where we next go in terms of our feature updates. So we're definitely all ears on just other ways that are helpful to use and apply the tool. Actually, another question we have coming through here too on insurance data is what's the sourcing of that? And actually, I'll also quickly append to that as well, as Spencer was alluding to on the maintenance data. You are able to go in and control for that. For instance, a lot of public fleets are self-insured. Insurance costs might not be an applicable cost, so that's something you can go in and zero out, further customize. But Spencer, I'll throw it to you if there's anything further to note on the insurance data sourcing.
Yeah, so insurance costs are set at the vehicle type. So we have one insurance cost for passenger vehicles, one for medium duty vehicles, and one for heavy duty vehicles. Again, those are pulled from the literature, academic literature, to try to capture, the midpoint. We obviously know that there's a lot of variation in those costs, and that's another place where users have the ability to set that if they would like down to the vehicle level. So that's another area we see often customized, but we do try to load in some defaults just to help kind of seed those that might not have their insurance deals handy, or just trying to look at that kind of quick cut analysis. One other piece I would add, and we'll get into this in the demo, is that all of our data sources and underlying data are publicly available. They're actually in the tool itself with sources. And so recommend playing around with the tool. I'll show people on the demo where to find that, but all those data tables are included in the tool with sources as well.
Yeah, that was definitely something we didn't want to take for granted in developing the tool, having a proverbial black box, as it were, or wanting to roll up our sleeves, showing no sleight of hand. So that's a great flag, Spencer, if helpful on going back through as you're looking at the readout, finding some of that data sourcing. Getting a couple more questions on some retrofitting scenarios and others. And again, more than happy to follow up with folks on finding a best way to use the DRVE tool in your own use case. I guess above all else, we have that customization, the build your own vehicle feature that Spencer mentioned. That is a way that you can account for like refrigerated units is a good example, or other types of specific application. Overall, as new vehicles are added to fueleconomy.gov and otherwise, those do populate over. So if it is a off-the-line vehicle application, we do focus on being sure those are updated and added into the tool as we get that detail and data that we need to do the analysis. One last question, and then we'll move into our rundown of the demonstration. With all things new, bipartisan infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act, Spencer, how are we incorporating all these new incentives or allow for customization on the MSRP of vehicles?
Yeah, so the big one there will be adding the IRA tax credits. I think we are waiting for a little more guidance on which vehicles are going to qualify. And then once we have that, we'll be able to customize our inputs so that each vehicle will have the eligible tax credit, whether that's the 3750, the full 7500, or zero, for once we have that guidance out. We're aiming to be do the same thing with that commercial tax credit as well. But again, waiting for a little more direction from the IRS before we throw those in the mix.
Yes, and again, remember, you can also go in and directly line edit the MSRP. For instance, some fleets have even looked at used vehicle stocks. If they have, if that's the availability or option they're trying to look at, you're able to go in and directly line edit that too. So again, more than happy to follow up offline as well to be sure you're finding the best use case and filling in the inputs as needed. But with that, and again, please feel free to keep the Q&A coming. We'll be able to actually weave some of this into the demonstration and can answer any lingering questions. But Spencer, why don't you take it away on walking us through the demo? And I guess as a quick time check for folks, this will extend past the top of the hour. Again, this is being recorded, will be shared out with all attendees. So no worries if you do have to jump off at the top of the hour, but wanted to do that as a quick time check. But Spencer, I'll give it to you to take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm glad we have time. We'll aim to kind of get through the nuts and bolts in this first 15 that everyone's planned for. And then as people stick around, we can get into all the fun different customizations and more complicated pieces of the tool. Great. So I'm just sharing my screen here, and we can go ahead and start out and show you all. First of all, what you need to bring to start your analysis, and then what the analysis looks like itself. So right now I'm going to pull up the sample data that we're going to be using for this analysis. It really is, simple to start out with, as we've emphasized. This is what our sample data looks like. We have 100 vehicles. We have in this first column VIN numbers. Those should hopefully look familiar. We have useful life. So this is for each vehicle. How many years you would expect the replacement to last. We're using kind of a variation spread from 7 to 10 here. And then the annual vehicle miles traveled. Again, all the inputs are going to be used for the 2 replacement vehicles that are modeled. So make sure that the annual VMT maybe reflects how many miles traveled are expected of those new vehicles, not necessarily if this vehicle's on its last legs and only went 1,000 miles in this past year. So again, CSV Excel works. Really just need those 3 columns. It's okay if there's other data in there as well, but these are the 3 columns. Start out with, again, VIN is really the only absolutely essential column. We can set defaults for these 2 as needed. But that VIN column is what we use to figure out the vehicles in the fleet and then match them up to replacements. So there's our sample data. Here's a fresh copy of Drive 1.8. Download again from our website, from Electrification Coalition's website. Either way, we're going to open that up, and it will load right into our Drive window. See here, we have a little intro and 3 options at the bottom. One cool thing about the Drive analysis is as you're going through, there are points where you can save your progress and then jump back in. And these 2 buttons let you do that. If we're just starting from scratch, we can go ahead and start with a new fleet here. First step is going to be to show the Drive tool where your fleet data is so that it can pull it in. So I clicked open. I get my window that has all of my files. We have that sample data on my desktop that we're going to load in. Just selected that. There it goes. And we're going to tell the tool that it's in the sample data sheet of that workbook and that the VINs are in the column labeled VIN. Here we have ability to either use a default value for the expected years of use or to tell the tool what column to use. In this case, our column is called useful life. Same thing with vehicle miles traveled, where we're going to go ahead and use our annual VMT. Now, the fleet zip code is fun. This is where how we set your market inputs and also how we decide if there are, how we apply state incentives. So I'm going to go ahead and use a zip code in Massachusetts, right in Boston, for this analysis to show off this state incentive feature. So you can see we've identified the zip code is in the fleet is in Massachusetts. We know we have incentives available in Massachusetts, so this button is now has lit up. Click on that, and we have a number of incentives we can add. You can see here we have we can add and remove settings. So if we go ahead and look through these 3 different available incentive programs, we have a little description and a link. Encourage users to read the description and then check out the link just to make sure that that incentive is available. So this first one is for local governments, public universities, and state agencies. Let's say that's not me. I'm gonna not add that one. This more EV truck program is just a basic point of sale. So we're gonna go ahead and add that one to the analysis. And then this more EV program is same for a light duty program. So let's add that one as well. So now the tool is going to go ahead and calculate how much each one of those we get for each of our vehicles in the fleet. So let's go ahead and save those settings. So we have shown the tool where our data is and then chosen to apply 2 relevant incentive programs for our location. Go ahead once we're happy with that and hit next. And this is the step where the tool is going to go through each of the VINs in the fleet data and decode what vehicles those represent, and then match up each of those vehicles to a ICE replacement and an EV replacement. And I'm going to drink a set of tea while it does that. Sorry, I'm still getting over a cold here. Okay, so it's done it. It decoded all 100 VINs. In case there were some invalid VINs in there or some VINs that the tool wasn't able to decode, there is an option to basically override those VINs and say, this is what that vehicle is. Fortunately, all 100 of our vehicles were successfully decoded. You can see those here. We don't have any VINs to fix, so I'm going to go into the next step. This step is where we set the vehicle settings. So that means 2 things. First, it means setting which vehicles are replacing the fleet vehicle, and then it's setting things like fuel economy, MSRP, maintenance and repair costs, insurance costs, and then those incentives that we just applied. So in this case, on the left, you see the baseline or conventional vehicle that's going to be modeled to replace the fleet vehicle. On the right side, we see the electric alternative. Over here, we see all of the unique vehicles in the fleet with the number of vehicles in parentheses. So take this Chevy Colorado, for example. We found 1 Chevy Colorado in the fleet. We're currently modeling a Chevy 2022 Chevy Colorado 2-wheel drive against a Ford F-150 Lightning 4-wheel drive. So let's say I wanted to, maybe this is in a rough application. Let's say we want to bump that to a 4-wheel drive Chevy Colorado. There we go. We've now updated this vehicle mapping to a 4-wheel drive. If we had maybe different maintenance costs for this vehicle, we could update either of these settings. Again, this is where you can get really customizable. For this analysis, I'm just going to stick with defaults for all of those. Once we're happy with everything that we've set, we'll hit update vehicle mapping, and that will now show, that will now reflect in the vehicle analysis. You'll also see in the bottom right here, those state incentives. So in the previous step, we decided to automatically apply state incentives. You're now seeing those show up here. So under that more EV program we selected, that Ford F-150 is eligible for a $2,500 incentive. Again, that incentive is dynamically applied. So if we go look at maybe a larger vehicle, that Ford E450, you can see that one is eligible for a $15,000 incentive under that more EV trucks program. So again, if people were talking about, maybe there's only vehicles on our procurement contract, you can go ahead and update all of these vehicles to make sure that you're only purchasing vehicles that are on that contract. We have a good spread here. You see here we have a transit bus. That one's eligible for a $90,000 incentive, down to some sedans and pickup trucks, etc. I'm going to go ahead and leave this pretty much as is. Up here, up top, you can see the option to add custom vehicles. This is where you can have a lot of fun with your snow plows, your refrigerated trucks, all of that, if you want to reflect that use case. We generally have the base vehicle. Here you can see we have that Ford 650, where we're kind of labeling it as a work truck. So if you have maybe custom configurations, all of that, it might make sense here to either A, you can go with the existing one and just customize the MSRP and the fuel economy, or you can go in and add a full custom alternative based on maybe quotes you received or conversations you had with manufacturers. Now, once I've gone through all of that, I'm happy with, I've updated all the vehicle mappings and settings that I want to update. Let's make sure we save that processed fleet so that if we want to pick the analysis back up, we don't have to go through that process again. We can just jump straight into this step. So I'm going to go ahead and save that right to my desktop so that if we want to pick this analysis up, we can do that right there. So we have saved, we've mapped the vehicles, we've edited the vehicle specific inputs, and then we've saved that process fleet so we can pick it up again. Let's move on then to the next step, which is going to be to do our analysis settings. So these are going to be things like market inputs, charging procurement, lease, loan, cash purchase, those types of settings that we can get into that are going to apply across the whole fleet, so aren't set at the vehicle level. Again, this is where you have the option, if you've already set them, you can bring in existing analysis settings. If it's a new run, we'll just start out with adding custom settings. We have 3 different types, starting out with market conditions. You'll see in this interface, this is where you pick the setting to choose. Here we're looking at the gasoline price. We have on the right side, this box will show all of the scenarios currently included in the analysis. Right now we have the default value. We also have the option to add a custom value. So if maybe my fleet has particularly expensive gasoline in my region, maybe we want to model $4 a gallon, I'm going to go ahead and add a custom value of $4 a gallon. Now on the right side, you'll see in this box, we now have both the default value and this custom value. If we leave that, the tool will run every scenario with both gasoline prices. And then in the final analysis, you'll be able to see, show me the results at $3 a gallon, show me the results at $4 a gallon. For this, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the default value if we just know we want to use $4 a gallon. We don't have to run those extra scenarios, and we can just stick with that one $4 a gallon input. Diesel we have at 322. Let's just call that 422 to be consistent. Again, I'm going to add that custom and then remove that diesel, that default diesel price. So now we just have one diesel price we're going to run in this tool. Lastly, electricity price. I know Massachusetts has had some electricity inflation recently. Maybe we bump that up to 20 cents. Again, this is a fun one where a lot of people will kind of run a number of scenarios here to look at all the different combinations of electricity and gasoline prices and what that means for total cost of ownership. But for now, we'll just stick with one input for each of those. Next, we talked about some of our charging settings. We're going to get into, in a little bit, some of these more detailed kind of equipment costs, but here you can set the cost of public charging. So here we have it at 32 cents. That seems reasonable. You can set the cost of on-route charging. So this would be for fleets that have a station out on location or a kind of mid-route that is not necessarily public charger at that 32 cents, but might be more expensive than their depot electricity rates. That setting seems fine to me. Again, you can set the cost of downtime from public charging if we're going to utilize public charging. You can also include cost of carbon. We have $50 in there. Sorry, it says a few of the settings that I set already. If we wanted to just throw in the default of 42 in there, we now have $42. Let's go ahead and include that cost of carbon in there. Lastly, the forecast year Steph was talking about. This is the ability to, by default, we're using 2022 is basically current, so we're using that kind of current prices. If we want to add forecast out into the future, both fuel prices, vehicle prices, and then inflation and whatnot going from there, we can see what would it look like if we purchased the vehicle in 2025. And then we have two different scenarios here in terms of a business as usual. That's looking at in terms of how vehicle prices change over time, or an R&D success scenario in which we see faster cost declines in electric vehicles. You can stay conservative and go ahead and go with business as usual here in 2025. And we'll just go with those two settings. We've done analyses where we map that out, looking at all 10 years into the future and how that changes year by year. But let's just go with those two. Moving along to charging strategy. This is where we'll really get into those charging details. We have, first of all, our charging mix. The default for this one is going to be all home charging, no public charging, no on route. And this is really where we're setting, how much of that happens at depot versus home versus otherwise. Go ahead and add default. I had thrown this one in earlier, which is a 90% home, 10% public, 0% on route, just to maybe take advantage of, maybe it's a fleet that knows they're going to have to rely on a little bit of public charging. So let's go ahead and actually stick with that 90-10 scenario where we're counting on a little bit of public charging, which will utilize the public charging cost and the public charging downtime from that previous scenario. The maximum power for public charging, that's going to affect that downtime from public charging option. We'll leave that alone for now. And then we'll go ahead and look at the procurement includes EV charging. This is a really important setting that sets, do we include the cost of the equipment itself? We see fleets take different approaches to this. By default, we are actually not including the equipment cost itself. We see a lot of fleets that, that equipment cost often comes out of the building's budget or a different budget. So we don't include the equipment cost itself. Here I've created two custom ones for fun. During this analysis, we'll include the cost of the charging equipment. You can see here we've set, we can look at, let's go ahead and just clear these out. And I'll show you how we could add custom settings. So let's say we want to add EV charging. We have the option here to choose yes, which is going to give us the ability to set the price, how many vehicles charge, equipment cost, installation cost, all of that. And then we have the option, as Steph was talking about earlier, to choose which vehicles we want that charging to apply to. So let's do a pretty basic setting here where we'll go with, we'll set level 2 first. So we'll look at our minivan, our motorcycle, our pickup truck, our include school bus in that, our sedan, our SUV, and our vans. So all those lighter vehicle classes or vehicle use cases rather. We'll do level 2 charging. It's going to be $800 equipment, $2,000 installation. one vehicle for each charging station. You can even set, if you would like, you can purchase those stations with a loan and set those loan terms. We'll stick with the cash purchase for now, and then we can name that scenario, just name that level 2. Go ahead and save that, and you can see it's been added over here. And then let's create another custom one for those heavier vehicles using DC-FC charging. So I'm going to go ahead and go back in and set that up for delivery trucks, freight trucks, refuse trucks, transit buses, and work trucks. And here we're going to set DC fast charging, which, as you can see, is quite a bit more expensive, and we'll call that DC-FC. And so now we're including the cost of equipment charging for all of our vehicles, heavier ones using DC fast charging, lighter ones using level 2 charging. So that's really that charging strategy setting there. Final group of settings is procurement strategies. This is how the vehicles are actually purchased, where we support a number of different purchase types, a number of different discount ones. I encourage, again, in the user guide, we have really detailed explanations of how all of these are set and applied. For now, let's focus on just that ownership strategy. That's kind of the core one. By default, we're purchasing that all in cash. Let's say we wanted to do a custom purchase with maybe a loan would be basic, where you can set the down payment, the loan term in years, and the interest rate on it. And then there's a whole number of different lease options that we can use here. And there we can set down payments, terms, interest rates, residual values, as well as mileages, mileage costs. You know, it's really important for us to capture all the different ways that fleets purchase vehicles. For us, let's do stick with just a cash purchase here, but invite all of you to play around with all those different settings. Go ahead and just stick with the default there. So I'll cancel here, and we'll have just that all cash ownership strategy set. With that, there's obviously more things to play around with, and we can come back and play around with that. But for now, let's just stick with that. I'm going to again go ahead and save our analysis settings so that that's can be loaded in really easily if we wanted to pick up here and maybe try messing with those again. So I'm saving settings just to my desktop, and then I'll be able to pick up where I left off when I come back. From there, we've loaded in our vehicles, we've mapped them, we've set the vehicle ones, we've set the market settings, we've set the charging settings, and we've set the procurement strategy. So let's go ahead and run the analysis. So Drive right now is crunching the numbers in the background. I know we're now past our hour, so thank you all for sticking around. Definitely feel free to drop some questions in the chat. I'm sure we have some coming in already, but I do want to go ahead and go through the whole process before we get into those questions. You can see here that we're running 400 scenarios. We had 100 vehicles, usually with a few different settings. So where we set, we set 2 different forecast years, that's going to double the number of scenarios because we're now running every one of those scenarios with those 2 different settings. You can see that took 30 seconds to run 400 scenarios. You can see that's pretty quick. If you start really having a lot of fun with the settings, it can take a little bit longer as you get up to 1,000, 10,000 scenarios with 5 different gas prices, 5 different electricity prices, all kinds of different charging strategies and forecast years. But for the sake of the demo, we try to keep it pretty simple here. So let's go ahead and pop open those results and see what that looks like. Okay, and moments later, I think we're, that'll happen sometimes. I think we are 20, 30, 25 minutes into the demo, and we have total cost of ownership analysis results with a few different settings and mappings. That's pretty good. This is the results will come through in a Excel workbook with a number of different tabs here at the bottom. The first one is our dashboard. That's kind of showing a high-level overview, and then we have a number of other breakdowns down below. So breaking this down, what do we have? This is our main chart with the nominal cost per mile by vehicle use case. So this shows for each of the different vehicle use cases. On the left, the total cost per mile, or the nominal cost per mile rather, for the conventional vehicle compared to the EV alternative. Let me go ahead and zoom in here so people might be able to see a little bit better. You can see here, obviously sticks out, transit buses are pretty expensive, both conventional and EV. EV is a little bit more expensive. You can see that broken down by charging infrastructure at the very bottom, depreciation in green, financing, I don't think we have included. That's why we're not seeing any financing, because we did cash purchases, fuel in purple, insurance in orange, maintenance in pink, and then carbon, because we included cost of carbon right there at the top. Fairly slim, and then lighter on the conventional side. So this is a fun chart here. If we want to, sorry, I'm just trying to zoom out here. Oh, sorry about that. Over here, we have, for those people that might be more table inclined, we have basically the average net present value cost per mile for the conventional vehicle and EV alternative by each of those use cases, as well as the not per mile, just the all-in net present value cost over the total life of the vehicle. Down below, we have a breakdown of the fleet. You can see this is a very varied fleet where we have all kinds of different vehicles in it. And then we have on a original fleet vehicle basis, the average percent savings by vehicle. So this is telling you that of all the Toyota Corollas in the fleet, on average, the EV was 9.2% cheaper. Then on the right side, we have a whole number of slicers. So this can help us filter all of these tables on the left. So let's say we just want to look at passenger vehicles, for example, because that big transit bus line is kind of obscuring our more detailed results. We now have filtered all of this just for passenger vehicles, and we can get a bit of a better look at those ones in particular. We also then have, a number of other slicers over here. If we wanted to look at maybe just the Ford Explorer and see what that, individual original vehicle looks like, you can see that that is, a pretty good case electrified. We're seeing pretty substantial savings here. Down here, you can see that's about 10% savings. Clear these filters in the top right. If it's showing, if the filters aren't selected, it's all going to show the average across all those vehicles. So right now, these are showing the average of all SUVs as well as these ones. This is important as we get more scenarios in. So for instance, we set 2 different forecast years. Right now, we're showing the average of 2020 and 2025. Let's say we want to just look at 2025. We can go ahead and use this slicer to specifically look at 2025 and look at those, that comparison there. You can see it's actually looking even better in 2025, likely due to those declining EV prices. There's also, we have a number of these set by default. There's ability to add additional slicers. Maybe if you set bunch of different custom gas prices, you can add a gas price slicer here to see the different the results under each gas price, electricity price, etc. that you had set. Let's go ahead and clear out all of those filters and show you a couple other ways to play around with it. Again, like always, we can save our results so that if we want to pick back up, we can just load those results straight in. It's usually a good idea. Same idea, you just save them right to the desktop. Let's go ahead and save that so we can pick back up in case something crashes or we want to come back to it later. It usually takes a second to save. As you can see, while we're here at the bottom, you have, oh, okay, we're good. Just save those so it's easy to pick back up later. That's kind of dashboard. We know people like to kind of use data, play with it, have different familiarity with Excel. So we have a few other different ways to look at results. On this report page, we've generated an automated report that you can save as a PDF that's in a more kind of readable format where we pull in the results of the analysis into some key takeaways around the makeup of the fleet, around what the analysis was actually doing. So this kind of page is most often we see maybe one person at a fleet or an organization runs the analysis, and then they might share this PDF of the report internally to kind of drive insights within the fleet. You can see we've auto-generated a few key charts here. This one is looking at the cost per mile across different vehicle classes. This one's looking just at light duty. You can see this is the same chart that's on that dashboard page, but we filtered it in a few different ways already for you, kind of packaged and ready to go to make your life even easier. And medium heavy duty, getting down to different use types, and then even looking at what are the replacement vehicles that have the best total cost of ownership comparison for EVs. See here that Ford Explorer compared to the Ford Escape, save about 10% if you can go with that Ford Escape plug-in hybrid, and there are 21 of those in the fleet. Similarly, on the medium heavy duty side, we have the top 5 to procure here. Right now, the E450 is coming close, as well as that Freightliner EM2. These ones are looking a little bit more expensive. And then down here, we have it down at the actual VIN level. So not just what models to replace, but actually which specific vehicles in the fleet are going to be best to replace. You can see here in our sample data, we had the same vehicle miles traveled and expected years of use for each of these VINs, which is why we're seeing the exact same average percent savings. But this VIN view will be really useful if you have VMT and expected years of use customized for each one of the VINs in your fleet, where vehicles traveling more miles are generally going to be better candidates for electrification. They have more miles to make up those fuel and maintenance costs. So that's the report format. Again, there's an option here to just save it as a PDF, great to kind of share internally, capture key takeaways from the report. Going the opposite direction, this is where we can get really granular on the vehicle summary tab. This is where pivot table Excel knowledge is going to come in handy. You can see we have kind of a pre-built pivot table here that shows EV net present value, EV cost per mile, original conventional net present value, conventional cost per mile, that percent savings. We have a category for how likely that vehicle is for electrification. And then we see here those vehicle mappings that we set in terms of what is the ICE vehicle replacement modeled and what's the electric vehicle modeled, and then how many vehicles are being modeled here. Again, we can condense these. So if we want to, like any pivot table, condense these and see the average across that original vehicle, and then expand to see the specific VIN. Here, then you can get kind of different levels of granularity where we can look at all the different pickup trucks comparatively and see kind of what the best deals are in that segment. You can also here add, I find it sometimes helpful you can customize all these pivot tables. So depending on how comfortable you are in Excel, this is also something where the EC and Atlas can be helpful in terms of pulling in specific fields. On the right side, we have that field list, which can be a little daunting at first. As you get more familiar with the tool, you can really get used to it. One thing that can be helpful to pull in, for example, is vehicle miles traveled. So let's say we just want to, for context, know how many vehicle miles each of these is traveling. I'm going to go ahead and drop that into the pivot table. And you can see we now have that one. Now, as you can see with pivot tables, we are now bringing in the sum of annual vehicle miles traveled, which isn't going to be very helpful. So let's switch that over to the average. And then we can see kind of how vehicle miles traveled might affect different vehicles' likelihood of electrification. That's a good one to drop in. Invite you to play around with all the different fields that are available. It can also be helpful to pull in, for example, we have all of the different components of the cost per mile. So here we're showing, the EV average cost per mile and the original cost per mile. If we wanted to pull in, the specific charging equipment costs or the fuel costs to really look at kind of where the biggest fuel savings might be. Also have the ability to bring all of those in. In that same vein, we have that kind of preset pivot table. Here's a fun sandbox where you can really just start from scratch with a pivot table and create any type of custom pivot chart or pivot table you might want. We can maybe play around with that in a little bit. This is all kind of as you get more comfortable with the tool, more advanced, maybe ask for help from Atlas and the EC. There's a lot we can do here to kind of bring out and drive insights from all that really cool underlying data we just created. I know we got a lot of questions earlier about data sources. All of these black tabs here have all of the data that is being used by the tool. So you can see all the different vehicles, MSRPs, fuel economies, links, fuel types, all of that. Vehicle incentives, you can see what's available there. Insurance costs with all the links here. Emissions data, there's a lot of data tables that go into this, but I encourage you if you have any questions about the sources, that is all available in these black data tabs. With that, let's go ahead and bring it back and open it up for questions. I'm going to leave this up because I have a feeling we might have some questions that can be answered with the tool. But thank you all for staying along. I know we're making good time. So feel free to ask away and see what we can do.
I'll go ahead and chime in, Spencer, just to help you out, as I know you have a couple windows open. Overall, we have a couple questions that have also been trickling through. And like Spencer said, appreciate folks who were both bearing with the presentation and demonstration. Hopefully this is enlightening and helpful. A little bit of a repeat of some of the earlier questions. One is, and recognizing it's really been a lot of ups and downs on finding available vehicle inventory. Ultimately, vehicles that we're running in the tool, are those based on current available vehicle inventory? And I'll modify the question a little bit for you, Spencer, too. If you're only looking at a specific vehicle set, how can we be controlling to be sure we're looking at whatever available vehicle inventory we're looking at, or what we might know might be in the field and available? Oh, I think you're muted too.
Sorry, I was drinking my tea. A lot of talking today. Yeah, so that's a really great question. That's definitely something that we encounter a lot with our fleets. Unfortunately, the vehicle availability is so kind of state by state and changes so quickly that we're really we pull vehicles from fueleconomy.gov. So it's really what vehicles are on the market, but not necessarily in dealerships ready to purchase. So what I would encourage fleets to do is do some of their own research on what vehicles are available and what kind of wait times they have in their specific market. And then in that vehicle mapping set, just make sure that they're only mapping to vehicles that they know are available. That is definitely, a challenge facing a lot of fleets. So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and overall too, like we were alluding to as well, absolutely feel free to get in touch with the EC. We can also dial you into some of our other procurement programs, which we do focus on helping folks find available vehicle inventory, as well as be clued into new model year order windows as those open up too for fleet purchasing. Another question too is, how can we find the Drive tool, or is it free to use? And indeed, the answer is yes and yes. You can find that both on the Atlas and EC website. Just underneath our tools and resources, you can find the Drive tool there. So indeed, anyone is welcome to use the tool. Like we're alluding to here, happy to also jump on the line to talk through any troubleshooting as you're using the tool as well. Let's see, you've been actually taking stock of a lot of this. One question I'll ask for you, Spencer, too, is, so it's a question about wireless charging variable options. I'll actually expand the question a little bit. If you're looking at a specific charger option, let's say you're comparing a couple different charging hardware providers, you have some of those cost quotes on what the hardware would cost. How can folks be sure they're incorporating that? You had shown some of the charging cost incorporation, so maybe just a recount of how we might be able to compare different charger costs in the regression.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So where we were setting, if you remember, we set the charging procurement settings where we said, we're going to charge these vehicle types with a DCFC, and we loaded in a default equipment and installation cost. There is the ability to update that vehicle or the charger equipment and charger installation costs to reflect quotes that you may have received, or even site specific conditions around, it's going to be really expensive to bring power to this site. And then you could include both of those scenarios. So in this case, we just did level 2 for light duty vehicles, medium heavy duty, or DCFC for medium heavy duty vehicles. You could set up a, DCFC wireless for medium heavy duty vehicles, and a DCFC, X manufacturer, and set those equipment and installation processes or inputs separately to match quotes that have been received, and then explore that in the results, the total cost of ownership impact of those different charging options.
Excellent, appreciate that. Question for you, Steph, and this is more an end user type of application question. In your experience, is it that the average fleet manager or town planner is able to use the tool to make electrification decisions with minimal support, or do people using Drive tool ultimately end up reaching out to us for hands-on assistance or advice? It's a little bit of both, but I guess curious to your thought and how you find folks using the tool.
Yeah, I would say that a good majority of the time, from metrics I've seen, it tends to be people wanting us to check their work, essentially to make sure that they're on par with what's going on. I remember one county in Maryland, they had a really good understanding of how the tool works, but they just wanted to clear it with me to ensure that, yes, this is in fact how the results are supposed to be. This is actually positive results. And but for those few that do want additional assistance, whether it be something as very minute as say a firewall issue, if their organization has a firewall, so workarounds for that are available, or if it's something much larger like their file is corrupted, but even then it's a simple solution there. So to answer, yes, both.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and indeed, the spirit of the tool is that, and what we find with a lot of users, there are those that do need to start at square one. It is a conversation about what is an electric vehicle and how do I, where do I charge and plug in? We have found by and large, and really where we wanted to focus with development of the tool, a lot of fleet managers do know that they want to deploy EVs. They are bought in. They just need to find that best fit to get over that last hurdle. So it really is the intent that you can, take and use the tool. Atlas and EC both. We also use the tool as a technical support and technical resource in our own programmatic work too. So, it is trying to find that tool for the masses, both something that beginner, novice can take and run with in just under an hour, like we're showing you here, or even going a little bit more into the weeds on doing some of the slicing and sorting as well. Question for you, Spencer. In the fuel cost analysis, conventional fuel versus electricity, what factors are we using for kilowatt hour per mile? Does the kilowatt hour per mile factor change by vehicle type? Can you elaborate on how we're doing fuel economy for EVs?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have, it changes not only by type, it changes by for each specific model. And that's the information that we pull in from fueleconomy.gov, where we have the efficiency kilowatt hour per mile that we get from fueleconomy.gov and can compare that to the miles per gallon for conventional vehicles. So that is, up to date, each specific model reflecting best knowledge of the EPA.
Excellent. Appreciate that. Let's see, great questions all up and down. I guess one question, and ultimately, indeed, as a reminder, we're pulling in available vehicles data pulled from fueleconomy.gov and from industry. One question was specific to the New Jersey zero emission vehicle standards. So ultimately, again, as you bring in that VIN, we're looking for that best fit EV. So the question was, does this include the New Jersey ZEV vehicle list as well? Inherently, yes, it would. But Spencer, I guess curious if you have anything else to add to that, or maybe even if you're trying to think or look at specific vehicle standards on a state-by-state basis.
Yeah, I would approach that one in the same way I'd approach kind of a state procurement contract, where you have that list of, when you're going through the vehicle mappings, it's making sure that the vehicles that that you're mapping to are on that list. With something like that New Jersey one, I would expect, we really do try to map to the best fit ones, which are going to be your more common vehicles in each use case. So I would expect those to be on, any type of, EV program list.
Excellent. Well, appreciate, Spencer, you're taking the time to walk the audience through the demonstration and showing some of the new feature additions here. Again, we're able to work through a lot of Q&A here, but if you do have any follow-up questions as you're using the tool or just something that didn't come to top of mind, absolutely feel free to reach out to either the EC or Atlas, and we're happy to get you pointed in the right direction to get you the tech support. But we'll call it a close here. I so appreciate Spencer and Steph, both of you taking the time to walk us through how we're seeing end users using the tool and also showing how anyone starting from scratch or maybe cracking the tool open again after they checked it out a couple months ago can be using the tool. But again, feel free to download the tool on either of our websites, and absolutely happy to follow up with any follow-up questions there as well. Also, stay tuned. We will continue to keep everyone updated as we do have subsequent updated versions of the tool that are released. You can find that available both on our newsletters as well as social media as well. So we'll be continuing to keep folks updated as we keep releasing new versions too. Thank you so much for taking the time today, and hope everyone has a good rest of the day.